Captain Jasmine Carter walked into the airline's headquarters, her crisp uniform and confident stride marking her as someone who belonged. She had spent years in the sky, logging thousands of hours, proving herself in a field where she was often underestimated. Today was supposed to be a defining moment, her meeting with the airline's executives to discuss a long overdue promotion. She approached the front desk, standing tall, her flight logbook tucked under her arm. The receptionist, a young woman with a headset, barely looked up from her screen. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat, almost dismissive. "Yes, I have a meeting with the executive board," Jasmine said, keeping her voice professional. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted slightly, her eyes scanning Jasmine's face. "Oh," she said, her tone shifting to something polite but condescending. "Pilots and executives are supposed to check in here, but the waiting area for applicants and visitors is outside." Jasmine's jaw tightened. "I'm Captain Carter. I have an appointment." The receptionist's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Captain," she repeated, doubt creeping into her voice. Her eyes flickered over Jasmine's uniform, as if searching for some mistake. "One moment." She picked up the phone, muttered something to whoever was on the other end, then looked back at Jasmine with a forced smile. "I'm sorry, but you'll need to wait outside." A flicker of disbelief crossed Jasmine's face. "Excuse me?" The receptionist exhaled, as if explaining something obvious. "This area is for authorized personnel only. I'm sure your meeting is important, but—" Jasmine cut her off, her voice steady but firm. "I am authorized personnel." There was a brief, uncomfortable silence. The receptionist's smile faltered, but she didn't back down. "I'll have to check with my supervisor." Jasmine clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening around her logbook. She had been through this before. The assumptions, the doubt, the disbelief that someone like her, a black woman, could be a seasoned pilot. But she wasn't about to argue in the middle of the lobby like she had to prove her worth to a stranger. Taking a slow breath, she turned on her heel and walked out, feeling the heat of humiliation on her skin. Standing outside the airline's headquarters, Jasmine Carter took a deep breath, trying to push down the frustration burning inside her. The city air felt thick, and the murmurs of people passing by only made the sting of humiliation worse. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to still be treated like she didn't belong. She adjusted the sleeves of her uniform, her fingers tightening around her flight logbook. A few minutes later, she saw a young male pilot approach the same receptionist who had just dismissed her. He wasn't in full uniform, no captain's stripes, just a standard jacket and slacks. Yet, as soon as he introduced himself, the receptionist greeted him with a warm smile and directed him inside without hesitation. Jasmine didn't need to hear the words exchanged to know exactly what had happened. No questioning. No skepticism, no demand to wait outside. A sharp wave of anger surged through her, but she didn't move. She could feel the weight of every moment like this in her career. The second glances, the raised eyebrows, the double-checking of her credentials. No matter how many times she proved herself, there was always someone who refused to see her as she was. A captain, an expert, a leader. Her fingers hovered over her phone, her mind racing. She had endured microaggressions and outright discrimination for years, but this was different. This wasn't just about her, it was about every qualified, overlooked and dismissed pilot who had been shut out of opportunities because of outdated biases. She exhaled sharply, then made a decision. She dialed a number, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hey, it's Jasmine. I need to talk to you about something. No, not later. Now." She listened to the response on the other end, then nodded to herself. "This isn't just about me. It's bigger than that." She ended the call, squared her shoulders, and walked toward her car, her frustration solidifying into something stronger. This wasn't going to end here. They had underestimated the wrong person. Weeks passed, but Jasmine Carter refused to let the humiliation she faced be just another forgotten incident. With the help of her attorney, she filed a formal complaint against the airline. and soon an internal investigation was underway. What started as a single case of discrimination quickly unraveled into something much bigger. Reports surfaced of other black pilots, women and minorities who had experienced the same treatment, denied promotions, passed over for leadership roles, and subtly pushed out of opportunities. Jasmine sat in a conference room with her attorney as they went through the evidence. Email exchanges between executives revealed a pattern of bias, with hiring managers making dismissive comments about minority candidates. Some emails even suggested they preferred pilots who fit the airline's image, a thinly veiled way of saying they wanted fewer pilots who looked like Jasmine. The further they dug, the worse it got. Data showed that minority pilots were promoted at a significantly lower rate than their white counterparts, regardless of qualifications. As news of the lawsuit spread, the media took notice. Major news outlets ran the story, broadcasting the blatant discrimination that had been hidden for years. Airline employees began coming forward anonymously, confirming the culture of bias and exclusion. The backlash was swift. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability. Protests erupted outside the company's headquarters, and customers began boycotting flights. Jasmine watched it all unfold with a quiet sense of justice. The airline had underestimated her, assuming she would just walk away, but she had forced them into the spotlight. Investors panicked as stock prices dropped. Sponsorship deals were pulled. Executives scrambled to control the damage, issuing carefully worded statements about commitment to diversity. But it was too late. The world had seen the truth. Sitting in a coffee shop, Jasmine scrolled through the latest headlines on her phone. She took a slow sip of her drink, exhaling as she read a breaking news alert. Federal lawsuit against airline moves forward. Potential multi-million-dollar penalties expected. She leaned back in her chair, knowing this was only the beginning. The courtroom was packed, reporters lined against the walls, cameras flashing as Captain Jasmine Carter walked in, her head held high. The airline executives sat stiffly at their table, their lawyers whispering frantically as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. The months of investigation, media scrutiny, and public outrage had led to this moment. Jasmine took her seat, her hands folded in her lap, her heart steady. The judge cleared his throat and began reading the final ruling. The airline was found guilty of systemic discrimination, failing to provide equal opportunities to minority pilots. The company was ordered to pay millions in damages, not only to Jasmine but to others who had suffered under their biased practices. But the financial loss was just the beginning. The damage to the airline's reputation was irreversible. As soon as the verdict was announced, social media exploded. Major news networks ran the story in real time. Airline stocks plummeted further, and within weeks, the company announced it was shutting down entirely. It had once been one of the most respected names in the industry. Now, it was a cautionary tale of what happens when discrimination is left unchecked. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Jasmine, microphones pushed toward her as questions flew from every direction. Captain Carter, how do you feel about bringing down a major airline? She took a deep breath before responding. I didn't bring them down, she said calmly. They did this to themselves. I just made sure the truth came out. A young black woman in the crowd, wearing a flight school jacket, stepped forward. Because of you, I know I have a future in this industry, she said, her voice filled with emotion. Jasmine smiled. Then this fight was worth it. As the cameras continued flashing, Jasmine turned away, walking toward a future she had built herself. She had spent years proving she deserved to be in the sky, and now she was ready to go even higher.